Hey everybody, Coach Brandon here again with another important lesson on guard retention. In the last video, we talked on the notion of offensive and defensive cycles. In today's video, we're going to focus on the important topic of framing. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about what is a frame, what's the purpose of the frame, and then the three different forms of frames that we're going to focus on in today's lesson. Okay? So what is a frame? A frame is the use of my limbs, usually my arms, to hold and maintain my opponent's body weight, to keep their chest away from my chest. So if Sammy here were passing my guard, and I was able to get my hands on her body and lock my elbows out like so, now when Sammy comes in chest to chest, she can't do so. Okay? So, frames are a rigid structure to hold and maintain weight. Now, what's the purpose of it beyond that? I can't just hold and maintain Sammy's body weight forever. If Sammy comes in and I'm holding, and I just maintain this, eventually Sammy's going to swim her arms inside my arms, take the frames out, and get chest to chest. So rather, frames are temporary tools that we use to maintain our opponent's body weight away from our chest long enough to bring my legs inside. So when she comes down chest to chest, I use frames to hold her off temporarily until I can bring my legs back in between me and my partner. Then once my legs are back inside, I establish 4 points of connection and I go back into an offensive cycle. Okay, so now we know that frames are rigid structures that hold and maintain my opponent's body weight, and they're to be used temporarily to hold off my opponent long enough to bring in my legs. Once legs are back in, I can realign my center line with their center line, and we can go back on the attack. Now, let's talk about three important kinds of frames. We use a different frame for a different distance. At longer distances, we use hand frames. At shorter distances, we use elbow frames. And at very, very close distances, we use backhand frames here. Okay? So why do we have three different frames? What's the point of that? When I want to use my hands to hold my opponent at a distance, I want my elbows to be locked out. If my opponent comes in close to me and I try to use my hands to push them away, this is a much weaker structure. Because my elbow is bent, I'm forced to use my muscles to hold and maintain this. So my muscles are doing 100% of the work. When I lock my arm out, now it's my skeleton doing the work. The force is going directly up the radius and ulna into the humerus and holding the shoulder up. So when I use straight arms like so, my muscles are actually doing a very, very small amount of the work compared to if I try to hold a position like this. If I try to hold this position for 1 minute, I would get tired very quickly. I can already feel my arms starting to shake. If I lock my arms out and I rely on the structure of my skeleton to hold the position, it's much stronger. So when we have greater distances, we use hand frames. If we start to get closer distances, I generally recommend switching to elbow frames. Once again, this relies on the structure of my skeleton and not on muscles. Now, not only are the different distances of framing and the different kinds of frames going to help me with just holding and maintaining longer, but it's actually going to make it easier for somebody smaller to hold up somebody larger. Now let's see how. Sammy, can you lay on your back right here? Okay, so the first thing I want to do, can I have you bring it a little bit this way? Thank you. The first thing I want to do is I want Sammy to have her arms bent like so and have her hands just like so. I'm going to ask Sammy to hold my weight off. I'm going to put my weight right on her hands, my chest. You see she has bent elbows. And now I'm going to ask Sammy to hold my weight up as I try to pull my hands off the mat. Ready?
Yep.
All right, let's go. All right. All right, I don't think she was ready. That's all. She just wasn't ready. Let's try it again. All right, so Sammy, you ready this time?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to drop my weight. You ready?
Yep.
All right, hold me up. No way. Okay, I'm too heavy. There's too much weight. Her arms are too compressed. Hand frames, no good in that scenario. Sammy, do me a favor now. I want you to lock your elbows out. Completely straighten your arms, please. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my chest on her hands. Now, I'm going to ask Sammy to hold me up this time using locked out elbows. Are you ready, Sammy?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to take my weight away. Excellent. How you doing, Sammy?
Good.
You're good?
Good enough.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That is thank you very much. So that's a great demonstration. When she tried to hold me off with her hands with bent arms, her frames crumbled immediately. When she used her hands with locked out elbows, she was able to hold me up just fine. And I've got some extra pounds on Sammy for sure. So that is an important reason why we use hand frames at greater distances and elbow frames at lesser distances. At lesser distances, you're going to want to switch to your elbows to hold them off and make space, to get your legs back in. So if Sandy comes in to pass my guard, can you put it, guard please? When she comes in to pass my guard, go ahead. And I have a lot of distance, I want to put hand frames in immediately. So now when she tries to fight in chest to chest, she can't, and my frames hold her off long enough to get my legs inside, get my grips, and go into an offensive cycle after I've realigned my center line with hers. So now let's look at a scenario where maybe she was a little faster. She gets an angle, and I'm not able to get my hand frames in place soon enough to get locked out elbows. So maybe she gets in too tight that I go to put hand frames on, but my elbows are bent. So in this scenario, she goes, I go, and I realize my hands are bent. From here, I'm going to switch to a focus on elbow frames. I am not going to try to use my hands to push her away. Okay, now, since I outweigh her by a lot, this would actually work, but it's not good technique. You want to focus on techniques that would work even against larger, stronger opponents. So as she comes in and I get here, I'm going to switch to a focus on elbow frames. That middle portion, thank you, Sammy. That middle distance, elbow frames, we want to have about 90-degree bends at the shoulder and at the elbow. We want to use this part of our arm right here so that the weight goes directly down in to the humerus, into the upper arm. Okay? If I'm using an elbow frame pointing in this direction and the weight comes here, it's going to crush it. We need to meet that force head on. Same with our hand frames, meet the force head on. At greater distances, we use hands. At shorter distances, we use elbows. Now, what about the third distance? What if they get in too tight for a good elbow frame? What if Sandy comes in and now it's tough for me to get elbow frames? If we feel that we're going to lose the race to get frames inside, I can put in backhand frames. Understand that when Sammy gets side control, she's going to want to get a cross-face control to control my head and pressure into me so that I can't look into her. She's going to want to get an underhook so I can't turn into her. She can use that underhook to flatten me out. So backhand frames are going to be specifically designed to stop the crossface here and to stop the underhook here. Can you take your left arm, Sammy, and give me a crossface right now? This backhand frame allows me to turn her crossface into an inside bicep tie. Can you get an underhook? When she goes for an underhook, I can easily pummel in my own underhook. There's no space for hers. So if she's going to pass my guard, we've talked about if she's at a greater distance, we use hand frames. If she gets closer, we use elbow frames. But if it's just a crisis situation and she goes so fast and I feel like I can't get frames in, just put your backhand frames in. Just hug your own body, grabbing your head here, grabbing over your body here. Now when Sammy comes in and gets her side control, I deny the crossface, I get an underhook, and now I can use this underhook to scissor my legs coming into my opponent and going into wrestling sweeps, single legs and double legs. So that is our in-depth study on the very, very important topic of framing. Again, a frame is a rigid structure that holds and supports weight. The purpose of the frame is to maintain space long enough to bring legs back inside. And then the 3 frames we use are hand frames, which are used at a greater distance when my opponent has not gotten too close yet. I use the hand frame and I lock my elbow out. If I go to use a hand frame and I find that my opponent is too close and I can't lock my elbows out, I will switch to elbow frames. Now I use the elbow frames to hold and maintain their weight until I can bring a knee or a foot back inside. If she comes in and I find that I even can't get good elbow frames going, I will go into the least amount of space frame, backhand frames, where now if she goes to get a cross face, I get an inside bicep tie. If she goes to get an underhook, I can get my own underhook. Now with no cross face and my own underhook, it's very easy for me to come up on my opponent's leg and start going for wrestling sweeps. All right, guys, I hope this study of framing is going to help you with better guard retention when you guys get back on the mats. Thanks, guys.